Okay, welcome back, and we're looking at the situation in Plateau as far as it concerns the governorship election that was held March 18. As you know, the governor that is in place now, having been declared the winner by INEC, now the court, following an appeal, has said that his certificate of return should be withdrawn and should now issue it. A fresh one should be prepared and be issued to one of his opponents in the election, the candidate of APC. And so we're going to wait to see how that goes. Either the governor concedes or he exercises his right and goes ahead to the ultimate courtroom, the Supreme Court. But all of this now brings up perhaps the other conversation that has often been heard in discussions on current affairs like this, is that it would be most desirable, wouldn't it, if we could arrive at a resolution of all of these issues before a candidate, having been preferred to have been the victor, is allowed to actually mount the power that was contested for. I don't know how far in the future this will be, or if you think it is easily doable, if things will have to be moved around, but this idea has continued to recur, that it would be a lot tidier, wouldn't it be, if all of these issues can be sorted out before the final word is said that X is the winner from A party or Y is the winner from B party.
That's an interesting one, and it's important to emphasize that this particular discussion has been ongoing for at least since the advent of the Fourth Republic in 1999. You would remember that in the series of litigations that came up after the 2003 elections, some of them took up to 3 years to be resolved. But in recent times, the case, for example, of Plateau State, which we are discussing presently, has gone all the way from the tribunal, and it's almost at the Supreme Court now in the space of about 6 to 7 months. So it's like a lot of progress since 2003 already. And I remember there was a time when this conversation was on the front burner, and then they had to create an expedited process for these electoral litigations that arise after the elections. So right now we are even on the fast track compared to the system that was in place before. And considering that, okay, we have improved a lot already on the normal 2-3 years process like in the past, I feel that it's even still possible to take it a step further by concluding all of this in the month or two before swearing in. But this ties with a lot of general issues like, okay, what is the capacity of the judiciary? We heard recently that the Supreme Court needs more judges, and also it's a big issue. What is the workload? Can they cope with all of the issues? And even when it was said that electoral cases should be expedited, if you remember, there was a backlash. People were saying, why should politicians have it their way? Why should politicians have their own cases first before normal cases that could go on for 10, 15 years are decided? So it was even a big issue then, but we are happy about it now, and we have been asking for better.
Yes.
So personally, I believe that, yes, it can happen. It's a work in progress, and hopefully maybe with more capacity or more judicial staff and all of that, judges and all being in place, we might get to the stage where the electoral cases are determined before swearing in. And then we in APC, also, if you look at how things are going, we don't interfere in the judicial process. So the case of the opposition maybe being afraid that if APC candidates were sworn in before the cases are determined, there could be a sort of incumbency factor coming into play. I think that even presently in the social discussion space, there have been talks about that and all, but it is sort of, should I say, surprising because, as you had mentioned earlier, the cases presently are sort of swinging both ways. It's a win some, lose some for both APC and the opposition. Coming from the Senate, for example, APC has lost senatorial elections right from Adamawa North, if you remember Elisha, but he was sacked in favor of PDP. In my state, Cross River State, the former governor of Cross River State, Governor Benedict Ayade of APC, lost his court case to the PDP Senator Jerry Beagom. If you go down to Abia State, Abia Central Senatorial District, you would remember that the former PDP organizing secretary, Colonel Austin Akobundu, had won his case. He's a PDP man. He won his case and he's there today. Kogi Central. Kogi is a very strong APC state. There's Yaya Bello, there's the governor, there's APC in the center. But Yaya Bello still lost his senatorial district in the court. The court sacked, I think, yes, Senator Abubakar Ohere and put in Senator Natasha Akpoti as a senator for PDP. So if you look at it from that level, PDP is even happy in having the upper hand in this senatorial case.
It's sort of reaping more harvest.
Exactly.
But you see, the sort of debatable aspect of all of this is that people are saying that the ideal where the Electoral Commission and the people, they are the true determinants of the results of elections. And whether we like it or not, we still have a situation where perhaps some political aspects in our polity, they know that, okay, there's always you can go to court. If you don't like it, you can go to court. And there are those commentators who would rather the courts were left out of this. That would be the ideal case scenario, where the court is not an integral part of our election process, the electoral system. There are perhaps people who actually depend on the judiciary coming into the matter, say, whatever, we'll go this way now. If you don't like it, go to court. That will take us. And you pointed out that, look, it has dragged on for much longer than we have nowadays. We had situations in the past where people had gone more than half of the term before matters were brought. So I guess it's an ideal case that will continue to be pursued, because it is, why is it that other jurisdictions out of this country are able to achieve this? And we have this situation here where you've pointed out the court load, judicial officers, and all of that. But the courts are still
an integral part of the process.
An integral part of this process. And that's a problem.
Well,
I can't see a way out of it because it's difficult to find an alternative to it.
Yes,
you pointed out rightly that, look, there's something undemocratic, perhaps, or unfair about ordinary litigants in court, non-political litigants, having to be shifted aside. Why is it that the political class will get the benefit of all of this? So it's not an easy kind of conversation, is it?
It's not, absolutely. And then also, there have been lots of talk as well about this particular topic. You know, sometimes it raises a moral question for INEC to declare candidate A a winner with X number of votes, maybe even double the number of votes that candidate B had. And then the court comes and say, okay, for procedural reasons, there's a favorite word they use these days, technicalities. They say, because of technicalities, you get thrown out and the other guy comes in. I think, okay, we all remember the case of Hope Uzodinma, His Excellency of Imo State, who wore that tag, Supreme Court governor, for a very long time. But he has proven himself.
Yes, he has proven himself now.
Because in the recent elections, I think his closest opponent got about 67,000 votes, but he got 500 plus.
It was a triumph.
So exactly. So he actually proved that he wasn't a Supreme Court governor. But then that's so we see him, so to speak. So it raises a lot of moral questions, yes. But narrowing it again to this case of Plateau State, most of the time you would, if you go deep into the provisions of the Constitution or the Electoral Acts that are usually used by the court justices to overturn elections, you would see that they are not built on nothing. They have substance. So when the moral question comes up, it's usually positive if the candidate, for example, like in the Plateau State where it was a neck-to-neck contest, the other candidate in court, which is the candidate of the APC, had almost the same number of votes as the person who was declared by INEC, but for the situation of the overvoting thing. So in that case, it sort of reduces the moral question of justifying the person's mandate that was handed over by the courts. But in some situations where maybe candidate B from behind, the margin was quite large and the person only got to power because of the court pronouncement, that's when it becomes a bit difficult to morally justify. But regardless, we can't say we should not do things within the ambits of the law, to use that expression, because of the social or moral sentiments. It's mostly sentimental, so to speak, because it's a bit difficult for people, especially on the losing side, to accept that, okay, just because I didn't do this right, they took it from me. But it's just what it is. You just have to follow the law regardless. And if you're found one thing, it's always a sad case. Like you clearly mentioned, in 2019 in Zamfara, for example, all of the APC candidates wholesale were swept off by the courts and PDP took over. So it's just about doing the right thing. And if you're on the right side of the law, there's just no way that the moral question or the legal question and all of that will come up. But then I still see the judiciary being an integral part of this process because, okay, from the perspective of the common man, I'm a common man and all. So you, a small guy, for example, going to contest elections against perhaps a big wig. Okay, for example, the immediate past governor of my state was the APC candidate against the PDP candidate. So imagine a situation where, okay, maybe the PDP candidate had lost and then a sitting governor bullied his way in. In such a situation, you would want the judiciary to be a real part of the process to retrieve your mandate for you. You need their help, you need their judgment. So I think it will be counterproductive and it will be sort of undemocratic to try to reduce the influence of the judiciary in the electoral process. And then it's a whole long process.
For now.
Well, maybe
for now,
depending on how our democracy evolves.
Okay. Because you also bring up the very important point of, what the rule of law does is that it levels the field.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter, I shouldn't say, I mean, that is, the rule of law is what it is. Every man is equal before the law. I know there will be a lot of people who will be skeptical of that, but by and large, the principle is that I think the president has stated this. He's even stated this in his tours abroad, that this is one of the reasons where the country fully endorses the rule of law. This sort of sends the signal out that we do things according to the best international principles and practices in this country, even as we are criticizing this particular aspect of it. But I take your point that we don't really have an option for now. Until things change massively, the courts are going to have to be involved. Take the presidential, but the other thing, by extension, maybe for the moment, coming out of this conversation in Plateau State, you see Nigerian commentators actually bad-mouthing the courts when it doesn't go their way, which can be a very dangerous thing. When it doesn't go your way, the same courts that in the past has given you your due, but this time it hasn't been that way, you then come up. I think the point was made by someone, it was Mr. George, how so many sands had been, lined up on a particular kind of issue. It didn't matter because we can trust that the courts don't look at those kind of things. They don't look at what the array is before them. They just look at the facts of the case and pronounce upon the law. So there's that sense where I would agree, even as I'm a bit concerned about the other aspect I spoke about, but I would agree that there's very little that we can do for now if the ordinary man, Franco Lise, old NTA, Franco Lise's common man, if he is also to have his part in Nigeria, then you're going to need the rule of law. So everybody can appeal to the rule of law.
Absolutely.
It's not comfortable for the person who is on the losing side if they decide that, look, we have the better resources, but it's not about resources. We have heard that the courts don't really look at sentiments. They look at the facts of the matter and also your pleadings, because expertise also comes into it, I believe. We have heard that the courts are not Father Christmas. You don't ask for a thing, we're not going to help you out and saying that if only you had known, you'd have taken it this way. So there's all of that, but we're coming from the point of view of the power of the electorate, one man, one vote, and how well that can play in Nigeria.
Well, that's an interesting one. And as you had mentioned, you touched on President Tinubu and his talk about Nigeria being on the path of due democratic process,
yes,
which would be a positive one generally for the country, not just in the aspect of elections, but socio-economically, so to speak.
Because all countries know what the rule of law is.
People just want to do business with people who are democratic, who are constitutional, who do things how they are supposed to be done. So personally, I believe that President Tinubu himself, who of course represents APC presently being the top office holder in the party, he's a Democrat. If you look at his antecedents, right, from, the military days and all, up until the days when he was the main figure in opposition politics in Nigeria, he has always insisted that he is a Democrat, and he has that reputation. If you remember back, I think in June 2011, either June or July 2011, President Tinubu was at the Royal Institute for International Affairs in London. That's at Chatham House. He was at Chatham House in 2011, and he made a very lengthy and interesting speech. And in that speech, he had said as far back as 2011 that democracy is still being nurtured in Nigeria. And in that speech, he mentioned that it is critical to uphold the rule of law. He also went further to state that separation of powers and maintaining the independence of democratic institutions, to quote him directly, are important to sustain the rule of law. So and
I think he also implied that they are alive and well in Nigeria.
Exactly. And he mentioned also that although our democratic institutions, which includes like the judiciary, which we're talking about here, and the legislature and all, are still in the process of evolution, but he clearly understood that strengthening these institutions would do well for the rule of law in Nigeria. And that brings us to the fact that I believe personally that the judiciary should continue to be part of this process, because the president, by his pronouncements, by his past background, and by his current body language, is not influencing any of the judicial processes or the electoral processes, which is why even in Bayelsa 2 weeks ago or last week, the opposition candidate of PDP won. If it was back in 2003 and all of that, we knew what happened. PDP was sweeping everywhere when they were in power.
Indeed.
But it's a different thing now.
Let me interrupt you for a moment. I beg your pardon. I'm bringing Mazi Okoroafo, who has called in and is standing by now. Excuse me, in Arochukwu. Good morning, Mazi.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, our guests. You see, when we talk about Nigerian politics and the judiciary and the rest, first of all, let me just give good news to our president. At least he has made it. At least Nigerians are aware of what we call about international reputation. When people talk about people that have made it. Now, as president has made at least Nigerians know that at least you have a say outside Nigeria, not only because when people turn to the local champion, when they see people outside and they assume maybe that it's by chance. It's not by chance. Because if you don't plan your program, there's no how you can get it right. Although I was so impressed yesterday when I saw the 100 outstanding, 100 talented women in the whole world. One of Nigerians was there. Kokojuwa, they mentioned her name there. This was that place I saw. That's women. What I mean by women? Past first ladies. I saw Obama, I saw that they were out at Malawi. Now, why are they assembling in Malawi? Somebody should be asking. Because Malawi president said he has cut out everything to 50% till next year. That's around March, when they are when their own year, financial year will end. Other March or April next year. That everybody, even those who are went abroad, he says everybody should come back. It's to maintain the status quo, that even the president is also maintain the same status quo, whether you are the minister or a commissioner or anything like that. That is what we should be talking about in Nigeria. Because if you sit down, they are doing this, there's no how government will come to your house and do what you're supposed to do in your own house. It's not possible. You as an individual should do your own. Allow government to do that. Then God takes overcharge. God number one that will do everything that you follow. But the question of Nigeria sitting down, we criticize. Now social media has turned to Nigerian international journalism. Because you want to learn how to be a journalist, start doing your WhatsApp and you're a journalist. Because they sit down, fabricate their own signature. Now to come back, Nigerian judiciary, they have to help us. Because what is happening in River State is not healthy. Because I was asking them, these boys or these men that are there, are they honorable members or honorable members? Because if they're honorable members, they should sit down and think they are below 40, all of them there. They should not be bringing commotion and confusion into the house, into the state. Because they are too young to behave that is what they were doing yesterday in House Assembly and the judiciary should be not every matter. Judiciary, some of these things, when they come, throw it away, tell them that the lawyers should help us Throw away those things. Don't be correct because you want money. If you carry on 6 months, take it to the court. Court will come then. Make the House Assembly wait those young boys and young girls instead of to sit down and do the needful. They now turn the state into a commotion. Where the question is, are they honorable member or horrible member or third member? Good morning.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafor. Indeed, this conversation of ours that started out in Plateau has sort of fleshed itself out because of the principles involved. And Mazi has brought in River State, you know, in there, and we're talking about, because I think the point that Mazi is making is that it's not just about the state and the president and the governors, but you yourself in your house, because the politicians appeal to each individual when it comes to election. What is your own attitude to this? And that is where he was questioning this honorific title that we give ourselves, honorable, or is it honorable or horrible? Yes. Is it distinguished? All of these show that there's a way it should be. But what Mazi is implying there is that, do we really live up to those titles we assume? Are we really being honorable? I think Mazi is questioning that issue in River State, for example. So looking at what's going on there, how honorable? So he's saying it comes back to the Nigerian. I don't know what you think about this. And, you know, orientation agency, National Orientation Agency, well, now everything is under the Minister of Information. Perhaps we'll make better tracks than we have made before. But the attitude, the political and moral attitude of, dare I say it, the ordinary voter, I think it has a lot to do doing this, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Apart from the fact that we all have stakes as individual citizens in the whole political and electoral process, I think it's been accepted that, okay, our leadership comes from within us.
Yes.
Alexis de Tocqueville, a French political scientist, had mentioned that every society gets the leadership it deserves. So there's a responsibility that rests on us.
We can't be admiring at a country and say, go and bring some people from there to come and fill our political position.
Yes, unfortunately, you hear people say things like that in the social space. That, okay, it's always better. Okay, there's this sentiment of the grass being greener on the other side of the fence. But they all have their issues. Regardless, it's incumbent on us. It's important as individual citizens that we are more conscious about the political process. That helps us make the right decisions at the polls. It helps us hold the political class accountable and all. So it's really important that we maintain that consciousness and be more active politically, and like in the reverse situation, make more informed decisions or hold conscious opinions about the whole things going on politically. And it's also helped with accountability, because you cannot hold your government accountable if you don't know what exactly the government is doing and all. I strongly believe that he has a point. It's not about just turning out at elections, but just following the whole process generally. But then it's always a work in progress. Democracy is evolving in Nigeria, and I strongly believe that it will get better as it goes on.
Indeed. I want to thank you very much for coming on the program. And it's been an interesting conversation. We started off, of course, with the core subject, which is the situation in Plateau State, looked at that. And so that's where we're going to have to leave it, that, okay, we wait to hear from the PDP in Plateau whether it is going to concede and let's get on with our lives, or it is going to exercise its right to proceed to the highest court in the land for all of this. But it's been, you know, what is it?
Young seesaw.
Yes, something of a political seesaw. But all of these things must indeed be tested. It goes along the lines of what we've been talking about: testing the system, testing the judicial process, testing the courts. So I want to thank you very much, Joseph. Mr. Joseph Ode, former Deputy State Chairman, APC Presidential Campaign Council, Field Operations Directorate.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Yuri.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right, then.